voting member on this committee. I will just say welcome and thank you for joining us in this evening's Planning Advisory Committee meeting. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed to YouTube, and the meeting recording will also be uploaded to the city's agendas and minutes portal after the meeting. I've received no regrets. Dean Caracasas has advised that he may be a few minutes late. And I would like to just recognize as well that this meeting is taking place on the traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. Before we get started, I'll ask the committee coordinator to call the roll. Members in Zoom, please unmute yourself when your name is called.
Wow.
Present.
Member Burgraff.
Present.
Member Huang. Member Hunter. I see that member Hunter is online. Member Caracasas.
Here.
Oh, thank you. Member Lank.
% connected to.
Sorry, I'm trying to get a bit more volume here. Did you just call my name?
Yes, thank you, member Lank. Member McKenzie.
Present.
Member Narujan. Member Viva.
I'm here.
Member Robert.
Here.
Member Sun. Member White.
Here.
Quorum chair.
Amazing, thank you. So if there are no objections from the committee, I'm going to be sharing the initial housekeeping portion of the meeting. We'll confirm the minutes, then consider item 5.1, the adoption of Planning Advisory Committee procedure bylaw and mandatory policies for advisory committees. This item will include a procedural overview for members, including the roles and responsibilities for the chair and vice chair positions. We will then consider item 4.1, the election of the chair and vice chair. City clerk staff will walk the members through the nomination and election process. The new chair would then preside over the remainder of the meeting, including the two substantive items presented by the Planning, Real Estate, and Economic Development Department. Is all the members okay if that's how we proceed?
Yeah.
I don't see or hear any
Yes.
objections. Thank you. So we will proceed then. Going through the agenda, the first item is notices and meeting information for participants and, that's just a, Nope, no, perfect. Yeah. So declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest for this meeting? And please feel free to ask what a declaration of interest is. If you feel you might have a conflict of interest, now is the time in the meeting when you should make that known to the committee. Okay, we have no declarations of interest. Thank you. So the confirmation of minutes, the Planning Advisory Committee last met on June 15th, 2022. Are those minutes confirmed? And usually someone will shout out confirmed.
Confirmed.
Thank you. So as noted, we are going to come back to item 4.1 because we have two housekeeping items to deal with first. So the first item is the adoption of Planning Advisory Committee procedure bylaw and mandatory policies for committees. I'm going to ask Caitlin Salton McDonald, Manager of Council and Community Services, to provide an overview of the report and procedural training for members.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, good evening, members of the Planning Advisory Committee. Bienvenue aux membres du Comité consultatif. Je m'appelle Caitlin Salter McDonald, gestionnaire du service au Conseil et au Comité au bureau du greffier. I'm the Manager of Council and Committee Services with the City Clerk's Office. So this evening's my presentation's a bit of a hybrid. It will be a quick overview of sort of our procedural rules of the game for the Planning Advisory Committee and then the mandatory policies and procedures that you will be adopting as part of this first meeting of the term. So Eric or Mel, if you could, thank you. Someone else is going to drive my slides for me. Thank you very much. So next slide, please. So we'll go a little bit over the mandate and roles of this advisory committee within the city of Ottawa. A quick overview of meeting procedures, an overview of the code of conduct. Again, very high level. You have all received the documents in advance with the agenda. And then a little bit about the participation expense policy for advisory committee members. Next slide, please. So the mandate of the Planning Advisory Committee, as you all know, since you kindly volunteered to participate on it, is to advise Ottawa City Council and the City of Ottawa on planning matters, specifically with respect to the annual work plan of the Planning, Real Estate and Economic Development Department. Next slide, please. There is also a secondary role to advise staff on and provide advice related to staff initiated items such as citywide policies and plans. And we have one this evening with the new zoning bylaw item. The Planning Advisory Committee is a requirement of the Planning Act and was first established in 2018 for the City of Ottawa. And I think we have at least one returning member who's been on that committee in the past. Recently, all of the advisory committees were reviewed and council determined that the PAC would continue with its current mandate and recognizing an expanded mandate to allow staff to bring items on an as-needed basis and the committee to meet as required to deal with some of those major policy issues and provide advice when it's required. The only other change with the Planning Advisory Committee for this term is that there are no longer members of council who are automatically chairing and voting members of this committee. Instead, Councillor Leeper, in his capacity as chair of the Planning and Housing Committee, is your liaison member with council. And so we will be appointing, you will be appointing a member to serve as chair and vice chair on a go-forward basis. Next slide, please. So a little bit about meeting procedures. You would have all received in your package from Eric, the advisory committee rules of procedures, which are the same as for the other advisory committees established by council. So these were approved by City Council recently. They haven't changed from the last term substantially. They're basically a simplified version of similar rules of procedure that City Council and its standing committees use. And I know a few of you have been on advisory committees on other city committees in the past, and they're very similar in that regard. What is a little bit new this term is through the recent review of advisory committees, it was confirmed that advisory committees are considered statutory local boards of the City of Ottawa. So there are certain mandatory requirements, including confirming your procedure bylaw at your first meeting and approving some mandatory policies and procedures, which we'll talk about in a moment. So the procedure bylaw governs really the calling of the meetings, the place of the meetings, and the rules of the game for proceeding with our meetings. Next slide, please. So the rules of procedure set out the roles of the chair, vice chair, and members of the committee. So the chair's role really, in case anyone's hesitant to put their hand up and volunteer, is not a particularly onerous job, at least as it relates to this committee. I think Councilor Leeper might speak otherwise as it relates to standing committees, but the chair will work with the committee coordinator to review the agenda before it's published, will preside over the meetings, and may represent the committee at standing committees, for example, be asked to speak on behalf of the Planning Advisory Committee as required. But the main role is just to keep things flowing in the meeting and manage the discussion with the able support of the committee coordinator, Eric Billow. The vice chair's role is to act in the place of the chair if the chair is unable to be available for all or part of the meeting. And the chair and the vice chair are selected by the members, usually at the first meeting of the term, which this is. Committee members, you're here to ask questions and provide comments and advice. You know, it's in the name, to advise the city on these matters and discuss and occasionally vote on agenda items. I would say in most cases, staff will be bringing information to you. There will be a opportunity for questions and providing feedback that staff will then take away as part of their consultation on the item. So it more often than not, there will not be formal votes or motions at this committee. Occasionally, we will be putting something before you for approval, for example, this evening to confirm your mandatory policies, procedures, and procedure bylaw. The council liaison, Councillor Leeper, will be able to fully participate in the committee meetings as a member, with the exception of if you are voting on something, he will not get to vote. Next slide, please. So, next one. So city staff will be bringing to you items for review and discussion. So a couple of times a year, staff will be bringing you updates and information on the work plan for the department as it relates to planning matters. And then on an as needed basis, bringing forward other significant items in the planning realm for feedback, such as we are this evening. Staff are here to respond to your questions. If there's anything they need to take away and come back to you on, they will do so. And staff will be expected to take away your feedback and take that into consideration when they bring forward their policy items. So this is, again, one of the consultation mechanisms that city staff have, one of many that you'd be aware of in terms of bringing forward policy matters. Your committee coordinator, Eric, who you've been in contact with a few times since your appointment, will provide all logistical support to the meetings, including giving you copies of your agenda and any other materials, and is your primary point of contact for your meetings. So if you have any questions, Eric is your guide. Next slide, please. So this committee will meet 2 to 3 times a year. It's variable depending on the timing of the items that staff will bring forward. We'll try to pull together an agenda that has enough for you to discuss without going too long between meetings. So definitely not as long as since the last time that the Planning Advisory Committee met in 2022. In consultation with the chair, some meetings may be rescheduled or canceled, or special meetings called, again, to deal with any emerging business where staff will be looking for your feedback. The agenda is prepared in consultation with the chair. Next slide. And will be shared with you by email 7 calendar days in advance of the meeting. Please let the coordinator know offline if you require any accommodations or documents in alternative formats than what you're already receiving, and we're happy to accommodate any of those. If you have any questions prior to the meeting, feel free to reach out to Eric and he'd be happy to answer them or pass them on to staff as required. Next slide. So the Planning Advisory Committee has the flexibility to meet virtually or in hybrid format like we are this evening. So we're hosting this meeting in hybrid format. If that's a format that the committee wishes to continue, we're happy to accommodate that. If it's easier for members, we'll usually canvass the members in this case for future meetings. And if all but one person would prefer to be online, we'll hold the meeting just on Zoom. But if there's interest to continue meeting in person in hybrid format, we will be able to accommodate that. As a local board of the city, these meetings are considered open to the public. So they are advertised on our website. Public is welcome to observe and attend. And as noted earlier, they are also live streamed on our YouTube channel, which is new this term and was based on feedback provided by the last Planning Advisory Committee that was something they were looking to do. Next slide, please. So a meeting can take place when a quorum, which for the case of this committee is at least half of the members are present. The usual flow of the meeting is you'll receive a series of presentations from staff and then have the opportunity to provide feedback, ask questions, and discuss those items. Another feature of being a public meeting and a public committee is that there are the opportunity for the public to speak as public delegations. This is less common in advisory committees because advisory committees are not the decision-making body. So generally the delegations will come to Planning and Housing Committee or the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. But from time to time, there will be delegations who wish to speak to your meetings, and so they would have the opportunity to do so if they register in advance and have 5 minutes to speak. Next slide, please. In terms of the conduct of you as members of the committee, the process would be that each member would have up to 5 minutes to speak at once. So that's just to ensure that everyone gets at least one opportunity to speak before, as we say at standing committees, you get back on the list for another round of questions or comments. So the committee coordinator will keep track of that time and assist the chair in keeping track of the list of speakers. If you're looking to speak in person, you can just raise your hand and use the Zoom raise hand feature if you are online. And once all members have had a chance to speak, then you can get back on for another 5 minutes and repeat that process as long as needed so that everyone has their questions answered or their comments. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, the vast majority of the time, there will not be formal motions or approvals required at this committee. When there are, they will come in one of two formats. You'll have on your agenda a resolution to approve, as you do this evening in relation to this item, to approve your rules of procedure, or we will work with you to prepare a motion to approve something. So when there is something brought forward for approval, the chair will ask whether once everyone's had all of their comments or questions, whether that item is carried or approved. If everyone's in agreement, you can just say carried or approved. There's no need for a formal vote on the item. If for some reason there is something before you where there is a difference of opinion, then any member can ask for there to be a recorded vote on that, and you'd be asked, we'd call your name one by one and you say yes or no. In my past experience, that's more rare at advisory committees, but that is provided for in the rules of procedure. So anytime something comes up in the course of your discussions, any member can, what I would refer to as a point of order, which is basically a, hold on, what's going on here? So you can raise a point of order and ask the city, the committee coordinator and the chair to clarify the procedures. Next slide, please. So after each of your meetings, staff will go away and so committee staff will prepare minutes from the meeting that will be shared with committee members as well as the staff who were present. City staff who are presenting will also take away notes in terms of the feedback received at the meeting. Staff may include reference to that feedback when they prepare reports to committee and council in the consultation section of that report. And there is the option for the chair of the committee or another representative designated by the committee to speak as a delegation at the standing committee meeting where a particular matter is being considered. Next slide, please. So I'm going to very quickly go over the next section around your code of conduct. But there will be more training provided very shortly from the city's integrity commissioner on that. So as I mentioned earlier, advisory committees are considered local boards under the Municipal Act, which means each advisory committee is subject to certain provisions requiring it to establish mandatory policies and procedures and making it subject to certain oversight mechanisms. Next slide. So as a local board of the city, members of the PAC are subject to the code of conduct for members of local boards. You all received a copy of that code of conduct, and there will be a question and answer session and orientation session in early March for all advisory committee members, including planning advisory committee with the integrity commissioner, where there'll be an opportunity to ask any questions. But there is always the opportunity, if you have specific questions, to consult with Karen Shepherd, who's the city's integrity commissioner. With respect to conflict of interest is usually what will come up most often in terms of seeking advice from the integrity commissioner. One thing I did want to note is that certain members of the Planning Advisory Committee, you've been appointed by virtue of your associate, your professional or community association. So that is recognized as part of the mandate of this committee. Individual applications are not being brought forward for approval by this committee. And you are participating by virtue of having those other professional associations. So that does not provide a conflict in that regard, but if there's ever certain scenarios that come up where you think, maybe this might trigger a conflict for me, Karen Shepherd, the Integrity Commissioner, will be the person you reach out to, and she's very responsive and will provide advice to you confidentially, excuse me, so you can make a determination whether there is an item that you would want to recuse yourself from or not. So if you have any questions about that code of conduct, you can go through Eric or directly to Ms. Shepherd with those questions. Next slide, please. This next set of mandatory policies and procedures are the easy ones. There are certain mandatory policies under the Municipal Act that all local boards must have, and they include sale and other disposition of land, hiring of employees, and procurement of goods and services. The policy for advisory committees is that these are not applicable because you do not hire any employees, procure any goods or services, or sell any land. So the policy that you'll be adopting today is to say this is not applicable to us. Next slide, please. This is where I forgot to update the slide because we gave the same presentation to the French Language Services Advisory Committee, who are in the same boat. But there is the one policy I will flag for you is the use of resources during election campaign policy. So the provisions that apply to advisory committees in this regard are that advisory committee resources shall not be used to sponsor or produce any campaign related material. And essentially, if I can sum it up, is that folks in this room are allowed to participate politically as you see fit. But you are not to engage in political campaigning of any sort on behalf of the advisory committee or represent that you are doing so as a member of the advisory committee. So as we get closer to anything resembling a municipal election campaign, we'll give an overview of that and some more specific examples as we do for members of council around the city's election related resources policy. But suffice it to say, if you participate, you do not represent yourself as speaking on behalf of this committee or as a member of this committee, then you'll hold yourself in pretty good stead in that regard. Next slide, please. Next slide. So this is the final section I will go over, which is the participation expense policy. So the purpose of this policy is that any member who is volunteering on one of our citizen advisory committees should not be out of pocket for any expenses related to their participation. So that includes, for example, we have a parking validator. If you parked in the City Hall parking garage, we will validate your parking. There are provisions for reimbursement of childcare expenses and mileage or paratranspo or OC Transpo fares. And if you require any accommodations for a disability in order to fully participate in this committee, those will be provided to you by the City of Ottawa. Next slide, please. And again, this would apply to any official meetings or any meetings where this committee has sent you as their designated representative to other city meetings. Next slide, please. And I think I already covered that. So next slide, please. So you've received all of your documentation related to the code of conduct. Please read it. I believe you already received a link to accessibility related training online to be completed. And you also would have received invitations to, if you're interested, participate in the city's planning primer program. So with that, I'll open the floor to members with the will of the chair to any questions. And then what is before you for approval is confirmation of your procedure bylaw and mandatory policies and procedures as outlined on the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Caitlin. So if you do want to ask questions about any of this, in your Zoom, just use the raise hand function. And Eric will, keep track of that, or if you're in the room, please just put your hand up. Oh, Mr. Rivette?
Yes, just one quick question. I apologize if I may have missed it, but the chair and co-chair are elected for a term of how long? I presume 1 year, but just wanted to be sure.
That's an excellent question. That is up to the committee. So, most of the advisory committees will appoint, a chair for the period of 1 year and review it at the first meeting of each year. This committee, if you'd like to take that approach, you are welcome to. If you would prefer, to appoint someone for the remainder of the term, that would also be an option. But we'll leave that in your hands. When we get to the election of the chair and vice chair, anyone that puts their name forward can indicate, whether they would be willing to serve for a year, or the committee could agree. There's not that many meetings per year, so that would definitely be an option. If that's what members would like to do.
Thank you. Member McKenzie.
Thank you. Just a quick question. I'm not too sure this question fits here, but I'll ask it briefly. Would it be possible when the minutes are circulated to reflect any questions that members may have asked that staff were not able to provide answers to during the meeting? Just to sort of, I guess, follow up responses to those questions, or to assist, I guess, in tracking and sort of follow up of those questions.
I think, if I may, I think that would be possible in terms of where staff is undertaken to get back to the committee with further information. We will note that in the minutes.
Yeah, that's exactly the
I'll ask
scenario.
Eric to just add, because he was the coordinator of this committee last term, and is in fact responsible for preparing those minutes.
Chair, one thing that would be helpful if a member wishes to have a formal question or a comment noted in the minutes would be to provide it in writing. There can be a little bit of discretion in terms of determining what was intended to be formal or not, but providing it in writing would assist and would be a helpful suggestion to incorporate that into the minutes.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough, and that's a great suggestion. So yeah, sounds good.
And this committee does inquiries.
Yes.
So I don't know if, Kevin, you want to explain what an inquiry is, which is a formal mechanism, but that might also be a very useful way to ensure that staff are getting back to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. Inquiry, similar to at a committee meeting or a standing committee meeting, is a question that a member will put in writing and read in at that meeting. It has to pertain to the mandate of this committee, of course, but then staff would then take that away, provide a written response, and then that response will be listed on the agenda of a subsequent meeting. Again, subject to staff resources. So there's a lot of things that can be phrased in the form of a question, not only on Jeopardy. So questions that are of such a scope that would really require staff to do a whole new study to answer them, but that probably wouldn't fall within the scope of an inquiry. But we'd be happy to, if you have any questions that, in particular, if they're of a more general nature related to the work of this committee, but maybe not directly tied to the item, that would be an option to bring forward those questions.
And does this committee have as a practice direction to staff, a slightly less formal?
So as this committee, unlike council and standing committees, cannot direct staff, it really would be one of two things. It would be that formal inquiry, or staff would agree during the discussion to take away that question and come back with information. So committee can make recommendations, but cannot, unlike council, direct staff.
So Carolyn and members, my suggestion to you would be that if you're asking a question and they don't have the answer, it can be useful just to say, will you come back to us with that answer? And that way, I think it'll be reflected in the minutes that way as well. Okay.
Yeah, no, understood, and that has certainly happened previously, and again, quite reasonably, staff shouldn't be expected to ask every question that's posed within the context of the meeting time. And so, the response quite reasonably has been, we'll take that back and we'll get back to you. But there wasn't really any mechanism for follow-up and making sure, other than, if it was me asking the question, chasing people down. And I just thought it might be useful if we make note of that in the minutes, and to your suggestion, perhaps put it on the onus on the member to follow up with, here's the question that I asked, and the undertaking was to try and come back with an answer, and not a big make work project that requires a big study, but just to hopefully, based on sort of a question that is requiring some facts to be shared.
See any more hands up? Thank you very much for that, Caitlin. So there are the recommendation of this report is to approve the three separate portions. Is that item carried? Very good. So now I will invite Caitlin. Item 4.1 is the election of chair and vice chair. I'll invite Caitlin to take us through the elections.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to touch on the member's question from earlier, there is the option for this committee to select a chair for an initial term of the rest of this year to be reconfirmed at the first meeting of 2025. Just putting it to you, Mr. Chair, and the committee, is that an approach that members would look to take for this initial election of the chair? Does anyone have a strong preference towards having confirming today someone to chair for the rest of the term?
Sorry for. My name is Naveen. Do you think we need to know people before we elect the chair, not the chair?
So one other option that, and again, I don't like to put acting chair Leaper on the spot this evening, but most of our advisory committees will appoint the chair and the vice chair at the first meeting if there are members that are interested in putting their names forward. If there are not members interested in putting their names forward, some advisory committees in the past have chosen to do so at their second meeting of the committee, and appoint someone to just chair the first meeting on an ad hoc basis.
So, I'm sorry.
So what's the approach for last term? They appoint in the first meeting the chair and vice chair for the rest of the term, or just for 1 year?
So last term for the planning advisory committee was a little bit different. So the last term, it was automatically counselor that was chairing the committee. And that was changed for this term to make the planning advisory committee a little bit like our other advisory committees. And so most of the advisory committees have taken the tack of appointing someone for a year and reviewing at the beginning of each calendar year. On at least one occasion, they've chosen to do so at their second meeting instead of the first.
So I don't see any hands up, and I don't hear any strong preferences either for waiting till the second meeting or not. So I think with the will of the committee, what I'd recommend is we proceed with nominations and see whether people are willing to be, and that those nominations be for a term of 1 year. If that's okay. that's appropriate.
If there are no objections from the committee, Mr. Acting Chair, then we'll proceed on that basis. For the next steps of this process, I'll ask for nominations. You may volunteer or you may nominate one of your colleagues who you just met. But most often than not, members would volunteer. If there's only one, we will begin first with the position of chair. If there's only one person that volunteers, that person would be, with the committee's agreement, acclaimed to that position. If there are more than one candidate interested, then we would have a runoff vote of those candidates. So I will begin by opening it up for nominations or volunteers to chair the Planning Advisory Committee for the next year. If second call for nominations, please raise your hand either on Zoom or in person if you are interested or willing to serve as the chair of the Planning Advisory Committee for the next year.
Carolyn?
Not seeing a rush of hands. I'm happy to put my name forward if there's somebody else who's looking to nominate themselves at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member McKenzie. This is the final call for additional nominations for the position of chair of the Planning Advisory Committee for the next year. Seeing no further nominations, the nominations are now closed. Member McKenzie is acclaimed to the position of chair for the remainder of this year, to be revisited at the first meeting of 2025. Thank you, member. Thank you, chair. With your indulgence, Chair McKenzie, I'll continue with this process before handing it over. I'll now open the call for nominations and volunteers for the position of vice chair for the remainder of the year. Are there any volunteers or nominations for the position of vice chair? This is the second call for nominations for anyone interested or willing to serve as vice chair. Member Hunter. I think you may still be on mute, but
Oh, apologies. Yeah. Yeah, I put my name up for that.
Thank you very much. This is the third and final call for nominations for the position of vice chair of the Planning Advisory Committee for the next year. See no further nominations. Member Hunter is acclaimed as the vice chair for the remainder of this year. I'd like to thank the members of the committee. Member Lang, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Sorry, I wasn't raising my hand for nominations. I just was thinking that since this is my first meeting, and I'm sure it is for a few others, I don't know who people are. Like, I know some people are representing organizations, but all we got was a list of names. So maybe we could backtrack at some point, maybe not right now, to do some introductions with organizations. That would make a little bit more sense to me. Or did I miss that? I don't think so.
No, and I think that was a little bit of the awkward hybrid mode. We're still working
Yes, it is.
out for these
person,
meetings,
but I'm too sick. So, yeah.
So
Chair McKenzie.
yes.
It is up to you once is the election closed now?
I believe so, unless there are any objections to proceeding, that could be something that we do right now.
So Chair McKenzie, thank you very much, Caitlin. I'm turning the meeting over to Chair McKenzie, and it sounds like on point of order, Chair McKenzie may want to do a
Yeah.
roundtable who's on here.
If all the members are amenable to that, let's do that. Can I ask the clerk, Eric Pillow, to sort of navigate our way through again, given the hybrid, if you can just start at the top of the list and call on people one by one, and everyone can perhaps give just a very brief introduction to themselves and whatever organization they may present. Right, perhaps I'll start with myself. Actually, before we do that, I am Carolyn McKenzie. I am here as the representative of the Federation of Citizens Associations. And now I'll turn it back to Eric to guide us through the rest of the group.
I think I could probably just go ahead. My name is Zachary Hunter, and I'm the landscape architect member of the committee.
Well, if we're doing it that way, I'm Anna Link, and I don't represent an organization. I live in Vanier, and I believe I'm representing the central city.
Okay, Francois, do you want to go next then?
Yeah, thank you. So my name is François Rivet. I'm also not representing any organization. I am a public servant with the federal government, and I have been involved in city planning, more specifically transportation planning, out west many years ago.
Terrific, thank you. Maybe I'll just proceed. I'll just continue then. Member Ball.
I'm not representing an organization. I'm here as a resident, I believe a resident within the Greenbelt. I am a municipal planner as well as an occasional college professor. So thank you.
Thank you. Member Karakakis, sorry.
So my name is Dean Karakassis. I am the Executive Director of the Building Owners and Managers Association of Ottawa, more colloquially known as BOMA Ottawa. I'm here to represent commercial real estate practitioners in the Ottawa area.
Terrific, thank you. Member Roberts.
Good day. I'm not representing any group per se. I'm a resident of a suburban area from Richmond.
Okay, and do we have Eric? The clerk? Do we have any other members present? I'm sorry, I can't see exactly who is in the room. So perhaps you could just help out by guiding through members who are physically present.
The room's on mute. Eric, perhaps I can just get you to confirm that you'll guide us through introductions of members present.
Oh, I see.
Now they can, I think.
Okay, there we go. I think we've got audio now again. Thank you.
Chair, may I ask, for participants in Zoom, what was the most recent member that was heard?
We haven't heard from any who are there with you in the room. I believe we've heard from all of the members who are participating by Zoom. But if I'm incorrect on that, Eric, perhaps you could go back to any Zoom members that I've missed. But I think we're just members in the room now.
Thank you, Chair, for clarifying. Member Burcraft, did you want to proceed?
Jason Berghoff with the Greater Ottawa Home Builders Association, representing that organization.
Member Huang? Jason Huang, I don't represent any organization, I'm resident of King Orleans, outside Greenbelt. Member Nuruddin?
Yeah, greetings. My name is Nuruddin. I work with Smart People Initiative in Canada. Yeah, I'm a member of this committee.
And I believe Member White is in Zoom and has not yet presented.
Colin White, I'm representing the urban area outside the Greenbelt. I'm a resident of Barhaven specifically, former City of Ottawa planning manager, and did serve on the Committee of Adjustment for a term.
Terrific. I think that's everyone then. Could I ask the minutes show just the quick that identify members and the respective organizations that have been indicated just now. Okay, so I guess we can move along to the next item, which is item 5 from the Office of the City Clerk, which is adoption of the Planning Advisory Committee procedure bylaw and mandatory policies for advisory committees that Caitlin has just led us through. Do we need a anyone? Do we need a seconder? This is a motion, I take it. So I assume we need a seconder for that. Colin White, I see your hand up to second that.
Point of order, Carolyn, we approved that before we came back to the election.
Okay.
Right there.
Okay, well then moving in that case, moving right along to item 6, which is the presentation of the draft 2024 work program for the Planning, Real Estate, and Economic Development Department planning matters. And I'll hand that over to staff.
Thank you very much, Chair McKenzie. Hi, everyone. I'm Fort Curry. I'm the manager of right-of-way heritage and urban design here at the City of Ottawa and the Planning, Real Estate, and Economic Development Department. It's there. For those of you in the room, I want to apologize for my blue hand. I had an explode on my way down here. I was not at the police station getting fingerprinted, so I will try not to flail it in front of you too much here tonight. I'm joined by my colleague, Steve Clark. Steve is our program manager in our business, technical, and support services group, and he's going to talk a little bit about his mandate, his services tonight. And my colleague, Carol Ruddy, who's our program manager of zoning intensification. Before I kick off talking about the work program and about Carol's going to talk about the zoning bylaw, I want to thank you on behalf of city staff for your interest and your volunteerism in terms of joining our city's planning advisory committee. Really excited to field your questions tonight on anything and everything I'm going to talk about, and the two of us are going to talk about. So please don't hold back. We have a lot of content, but we're very much looking forward to a dialogue. To kick things off, you can go to the next slide, Eric, when you've got a chance. Going to first walk you a little bit through our department, the Planning, Real Estate, and Economic Development Department. So our vision, just wait for the slide to come up, is for Ottawa to be the most livable mid-sized city in North America. This is a vision that we're very proud of and that we've had for the last 5 years. Next slide. Our mandate is we champion the city building priorities of the City of Ottawa. We plan and manage development opportunities and transportation infrastructure. And we manage city real estate for population growth and economic prosperity. So how do we do this organizationally? Next slide. There's been a series of changes in the leadership of our department over the last 18 months. So I'm going to, for the returning members and new members, walk you through very briefly our organizational structure. We have an acting general manager right now who is VDG. Her substantive position is as the director of transportation planning, and she's been our acting interim general manager for about 2 months.
Our former acting general manager, Don Herwire, is now serving as our special advisor of planning, working on some strategic projects. And for those of you that have known Don, he's been around from the Nepean days and with the Amalgamated City of Ottawa from the beginning. And we're with mixed emotions, excited for Don retiring shortly in this spring. It's been wonderful working with him, and we're looking forward to harnessing all that he has in him before he leaves us this April. Our service area departmental management team from left to right is John Buck, their chief building official, Derek Moody, who's our director of planning services, Sean Moore, who is our director of the Lansdowne Park project, Charmaine Forty, who's our manager of business and technical support services, Peter Radke, who's our acting director of our corporate real estate office, Jennifer Armstrong, who's backfilling for Vivi as our acting director of transportation planning. I'll skip myself, the manager of right-of-way, heritage and urban design, and David Wise, who's our acting director of economic development and long-range planning. If you go to the next slide, Eric, really tonight we're going to focus our presentation on the services that we offer within our department and our department's work program. And also give you a presentation about one of the cornerstone initiatives that we're undertaking over this term of council, which is our new zoning bylaw. Next slide. So tonight, I'm going to focus on our service areas within planning, real estate, and economic developments. And just for a note, I'm not going to talk tonight about two service areas. The first being our transportation planning group, who reports to our transportation committee. And secondly is our corporate real estate office, who reports to our finance and corporate services committee and who is our city landlord real estate agent. You go to the next slide, please. Next one. So as I walk through the next few slides, I'm going to show you the small units within our service areas that work on planning items. I'm going to highlight some of the programs and projects that they're working on. The PDF document that you were provided as part of your package contains the full list of projects. And as mentioned, was recently updated as of February 1st this year. Next slide. So our first branch is our Building Code Services branch. Building Code Services is our regulatory authority for building construction for the city. The service area enforces the Ontario Building Code to protect the public. The Ontario Building Code establishes uniform minimum standards for health, life safety, fire protection, access, energy efficiency, and structural sufficiency that must be included in the design and construction of any building. Our Public and Building Code Services review plans, issue permits, and perform all inspections for Ontario Building Code required dwellings facilities. Their main initiative in 2024 is the implementation of our land management system. And really what that is it's our backbone of our permit administration, payment, circulation system. It doesn't sound terribly sexy, but it is fundamental to their operations. And it will be rolled out in turn to our entire department as the way in which a client will be able to apply for a permit or a file at the City of Ottawa, make payments, see the status of their application, and as well include components for the community to be engaged through the life of an application or a permit where appropriate. Our second service area, if you go to the next slide, please, Eric, is our economic development and long-range planning service area, which facilitates economic growth in Ottawa by setting the direction and managing the evolution of the city. This service area delivers programs, services, and initiatives that advance job creation and economic growth, diversification, while managing the growth of the city through the official plan, various area plans, regulatory controls such as the comprehensive zoning bylaw, and our resiliency and natural system planning services. Today, I'm just going to focus on the areas of interest for yourselves, our policy area, and our research and forecasting unit. Our policy unit has three areas which focus on the official plan, community plans, and zoning. They are responsible for developing the planning policy framework, for directing and managing the growth of the city through the official plan, secondary plans, and community plans, and developing and maintaining regulatory tools, including our zoning bylaw. The Research and Forecasting Group is the center of expertise for population, employment, land use, development of travel demand input data, and for monitoring and forecasting related to population, employment, and housing. Next slide, please. In terms of 2024, the two units are focused on various secondary plans, which the full list is in your package. The new zoning bylaw update project, which we're going to be speaking to you about specifically tonight. Housing unit and building permit tracking, residential intensification monitoring reports. So very important, and in this era of housing affordability and provincial imperative, more important than ever. And we're very proud, as you probably saw in the news last week, to be a recipient of the Housing Accelerator Fund. And so this group is charged with implementing the various components, or overseeing the oversight of the various components of the Housing Accelerator Fund. With that, I'm going to now pass it over to my colleague Steve Clark, who will walk you through our business and technical support services.
Next slide, please. So our business and technical support services provides innovative and strategic support services to all of CRED, as well as our various stakeholders, industry, and also including our city manager's office, members of council, mayor's office, the Indigenous communities, and residents of the city of Ottawa. Some of the main services the business and technical support services provides is project management and strategic advice. We manage the legislative agenda for our department. We do complete and coordinate all the departmental and corporate reporting for our department. We provide these stakeholder engagement services and take a strong role in that for some of our high-profile projects and some of our major initiatives, as well as we manage the website for the Planning, Real Estate, and Economic Development department with all that information, our graphics, and lastly, we work on departmental business improvement. Thanks, Eric. Some of the focuses on the work program that Business and Technical Support Services is supporting is the Rural Summit in 2024, Lansdowne 2.0 Communication Strategy, the Pre-Application Consultation, the Planning Primer, which I believe many of you had the opportunity of recently attending, Corporate User Fee Review, the DC bylaw, as well as the community benefit charge rollout. Next slide, please. For planning services, so our other service area, Derek Moody is the Director of Planning Services. He was not able to attend today, so I am going to go through this for you here. Planning services plays a very important role for the city of Ottawa. By managing the evolution of the city, they're helping to enhance the quality of life so that people can live, prosper, and connect in neighborhoods, buildings, and spaces that are vibrant, well-designed, safely built, and sustainable. Planning services conducts multidisciplinary reviews and approvals of development applications on a geographical basis, including planning, engineering, urban design, arts, environment, trees, transportation, and heritage consideration. And they update the online development application search tool to ensure it's providing information on current development applications, as well as providing technical support, compliance support, and zoning reports. And they are also currently working on the next steps for the Brownfield program. I think this slide does contain their focus, as well as Court have already highlighted the land management system. They too are starting their journey towards transitioning from their current database to the land management system. And they are still working on monitoring the impacts of the Bill 109 that recently impacted their planning service supports in 2020. Great, I will hand it back over to Court to talk about his own service area.
Thanks, Steve. Next slide here, please. So last but not least, yes, right away, heritage and urban design services. The 3 units I'm going to speak about tonight, the first being Heritage Planning Unit. So that unit undertakes heritage studies and designations. They provide input into the development review process that Steve just spoke about, and they process applications under the Ontario Heritage Act. The Public Realm and Urban Design Unit provides input to the development review process as well. It's the preparation of guidelines. We'll talk about a few of those in a second, and special studies. They also develop public realm plans and provide input into city capital projects with the intention of improving the public realm. The last team is our Geospatial Analytics and Technical Solutions team, otherwise referred to as GATS. They provide a suite of geometric services and manage the central registry of infrastructure drawings, technical reports, and corporate online access through GeoOttawa. So those of you that have used GeoOttawa, really the data generation and currency it's the backbone of that application. GATS provides critical spatial information such as sewer and water network, zoning, forecasting, construction, and composite utility mapping, both available through GeoOttawa and through our information center. And I'm very proud to say that they've recently won a prestigious award for our digital twin project. We had a presentation out at Chair Leaper's committee in the end of January. Happy to talk further about that project tonight. And there's certainly more information on that on the web, and certainly through the zoning bylaw project that we will in the next few months. So in terms of next slide here, in terms of some key initiatives that we're working on, a lot of emphasis and focus on the Byron Market. City Council approved a public realm plan for the Byron Market District in 2021. It provides a vision for rejuvenation of that special part of Ottawa. So focusing this year on the implementation of some of the capital construction projects. We also are under a great deal of pressure through Bill 23 to comply with changes to the Ontario Heritage Act, namely the wind down of our Heritage Register, which I'm happy to talk about further this evening if it's the interest of members. So reviewing our Heritage Register and undertaking quite a dynamic designation process and the development of a work plan for the creation of new heritage conservation districts. We are undertaking a review now that the official plan is approved of our urban design guidelines. This year, we're focusing on our mid-rise design guidelines and finalizing our low-rise design guidelines, as well as doing a touch-up to our high-rise design guidelines, as well looking at the other ones that will need to be cycled through for review to ensure that they're compliant with the provincial legislation and our new official plan. We're also directed by council to undertake a review of our downtown Ottawa urban design strategy. So that's a 20-year-old vision for the investment plan for downtown. Looking at our street network, looking at our ceremonial areas, looking at our great public realm spaces, looking at our one-way streets, looking at our parks, looking at really where we need to provide enhanced investment in our core as part of Mayor Sutcliffe's desire to focus on the revitalization of our downtown over this term of council, and I should say City Council's desire to do so. And then finally, the digital twin initiative. So essentially taking the 2D, making everything 3D, having a robust client available, counselor available, community available, 3D mapping of Ottawa. We're able to use through community consultation, through the development review process. That is part of our GeoOttawa offerings for accessibility for all inputs and also for all cycles of our development review process. So with that was a lot of information. I'm going to stop there and ask if there's any questions about our services, about some of the projects that I spoke about anything that you saw in your package that was provided in terms of our work plan. I'll try my best along with my colleagues to get into some of the granularity of some of those items to the best of my ability. Should we not have that information, we'll have to take it away as discussed earlier and come back to the pack with further information. With that, Chair, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Court and staff for that presentation. I see one hand up. I'll call upon Member White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Court. Good to see you again. Been a long time. Just a couple of questions, and perhaps, Madam Chair, the committee might be able to address this. I'd be interested in seeing some further background on a couple of the items that are a priority for the department, and specifically, I'm interested in particular in the study relating to, I think it's to Bill 109, which is the cutting the red tape initiative by, I guess that was initiated by the province as part of the Ontario Housing Affordability Task Force. I'd be interested in just hearing about some of the directions that study might be taking to cut red tape in the approval process with the objective of improving the delivery of affordable housing. Also, on the pre-application consultation project, as a former member of the Committee of Adjustment, I was a bit surprised that in that process, there appeared to be a very little pre-consultation with applicants, between the applicants and staff representatives as part of the application process. There didn't appear to be any kind of formalized approach and no mandatory requirement for any pre-consultation. I think that led to, in a number of circumstances, and over the couple of years that I was involved with the committee, a lot of applications that came before us that, quite frankly, I thought, in looking at some of them, that they could have been either avoided entirely or at least modified such that they would not involve as much discussion and angst amongst the public and the developers that were involved in these applications. A lot of them were submitted by property owners who are private property owners who have a little experience in the process, and we did run into some issues. The committee over a number of years ran into issues with these applications that didn't have sufficient pre-consultation. So I'd be interested in hearing something about that, if in fact the Committee of Adjustment is part of this pre-consultation review project.
So what I would suggest is there's a really good report that the department brought forward last June to City Council that detailed all the ways in which it was going to be complying and changing its processes to comply with Bill 109. Perhaps we could all make a note, and we'll certainly circulate that as part of the minutes. But in brief, yes, Bill 109 has caused, rightfully so, a substantial change to the way that planning services, my colleague Derek's service areas had to do its operations. So there's been a significant change to the pre-application consultation process through the development review cycle. That report really sets out the ways in which planning services has modified its operations. We've also changed the way in which we approach files. So we've now moved towards a team approach where we have several staff assigned to the file to keep that file moving forward. If a staff member is away sick or on a sabbatical or a leave. And then we've also enhanced our resources, quite frankly. I think we've hired 27 additional people. We were significantly under-resourced for the volume of applications that we've had historically. And so primarily in our engineering and in our file review areas, we have added additional resources. We've also established a specialized group. I think it's being stood up as of the first week of March that will be focusing on affordable housing, school board, and Committee of Adjustment files specifically. So, Colin, you'll recall from your time here, but for the benefit of everyone, we're organized geographically in development review. We've got our South group, our East group, our Central group, our Rural group, our West group. We've stood up a new group that will be focused on affordable housing projects, school projects, high profile, tricky projects, and also help us deal with the ebbs and flows geographically of certain areas that are overtaxed. So if we see a rush of applications in the West End, this group will be able to help ensure that we meet our new statutory timelines regardless of where in Ottawa that application is.
Thank you. And on committee of adjustment, pre-consultation is that part of that project?
I'm getting a little bit of my subject matter expertise here in terms of committee adjustment calls, so I would have to take that away and I'll ask Eric for a more fulsome response. I don't want to step into territory that I don't know too much about, but thank you for the question and we'll follow up.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Court. Don't see any other raised hands within the Zoom area. Is there anyone in person, any other members who have any questions at this point? No. I have a couple of questions, I guess, just around the Housing Accelerator Fund and the implications for the work plan. And I guess my first question would be what commitments the city has made that imply we need to be doing things that may not comply with our new official plan or current zoning or any other relevant policy. I assume there are likely to be some things that that are in that agreement that would imply that there's some work to be done. Is that part of? I assume that's part of the work plan for this year, and if so, maybe it would be interesting to have a better understanding of what those commitments look like. And I guess a follow-up question to that will the actual agreement be made public by the city?
Thanks for the question. I apologize. I didn't see my colleague Royce, who's our manager of policy planning, on the line. So perfect person to answer those questions.
Super. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the introduction, Court. My name is Royce Fu. I'm the acting manager of policy planning. In terms of the Housing Accelerator Fund, so Council did approve an action plan in July of 2023. That is available online to review. In terms, I can just give a brief overview of the action plan. There are 9 initiatives that the city applied for as part of our action plan. So first is transit-oriented zoning amendments around transit stations and inclusionary zoning. I'll just note that each of these initiatives are projects on their own, and they will follow through their normal cycle. Some will have different scope and some will have different project lengths. We're also looking at increasing zoning permissions to allow multi-unit intensification. In fact, not too long ago, there was a zoning bylaw amendment to implement a Bill 23 to allow 3 units on a residential service lot. We are looking at putting together an affordable housing community improvement plan. We are piloting an office to residential conversion project, and that actually made its way through council in the fall of 2023. We are looking at revising our policies to accelerate the disposal and preparation of city-owned lands for housing. We also have an affordable housing pipeline strategy, and that's really the backbone of our action plan. Most of the funding will go towards that strategy, and what that is through our affordable housing department. They have partners for housing providers. The biggest one would be Ottawa Community Housing, but there are also other housing providers that the city partners with and provides funding also from the federal and provincial grants to build affordable housing. So many of those providers will have projects what we call shovel ready. They will have approvals in place and have everything from the project perspective ready to go. They just would need some funding to move forward. So we're looking to help those providers move forward in those projects. We also are looking at streamlining planning approvals. Most of that backbone's been done through Bill 109 and accelerating our application timelines for zoning and bylaw amendments and site plan approvals. But we're also looking at some other things on the back end that wasn't part of Bill 109, such as the delegation to staff of minor zoning bylaw amendments. So that would hopefully streamline and shorten the application process. We of course have the new comprehensive zoning bylaw, which Carol will provide a fascinating presentation on in a little bit, and a digital twin tool, which will also help in the providing the provisions in the zoning bylaw for pretty much every lot within the city. And then we also have what we call the development of on-site stormwater management tools. So as part of Bill 23 and the permissions for 3 units on any service residential lot, and really the official plan that's calling for gentle intensification of increasing the number of units within a lot, that can in most instances require increased impervious services, which will increase stormwater runoff. Through Bill 23, there was a change in whether some of these developments would be applicable for site plan application. Many of them are not anymore, and so we need to try and capture them through the building permit process. So we're looking at developing a tool that will help our housing builders move through that process a lot quicker, have some sort of canned solutions for stormwater management so that they can manage some of these issues that weren't really issues back when these laws were first developed. So it's really meant to help move gentle intensification faster through the process. So staff right now is putting together a report for council consideration, just on an overview of our action plan and our next steps moving forward on how we are planning to allocate the funding we receive from CMHC.
Okay, thank you for that. And are there further approvals that will be required by City Council to, I guess to, I don't know, to validate the agreement with the federal government?
So we have the agreement is,
yeah. Sorry, go
so
ahead.
Chair, the agreement has been executed, so we have it in place. So really, what we need to do now is make sure we move through each of these initiatives. So in a sense, we'll take one of the office to residential conversion pilot. Most of that's already been done. So that initiative has pretty much been completed. So we can report on the progress of CMHC that's done. For the new zoning bylaw amendment, new zoning bylaw, that's on the opposite end of the scale. We are putting forward a draft this year and sort of that consultation progress and process, and we'll be reporting on how that goes through. And of course, council will be able to make some decisions on that when they're asked through a report. So it really depends on the project, but we will have to report back to CMHC on a yearly basis on the progress of each of our initiatives.
Okay, so there's nothing in the agreement, just to confirm, that requires council approval. You said
it would depend on the project, Chair. So, for example, if we were to bring forward zoning bylaw amendments around transit-oriented permissions, that would require council approval.
I see. So it's not not that you're asking for council to approve the agreement. You'll be, as you bring individual executable items forward, those will be the subject of council approval.
Correct. And before that, council will have to approve the allocation of the funds that we receive from CMHC.
Right. Okay. No, thank you. Just and I guess another question, because I'm curious. My understanding for the receipt of the funds through that federal program are based on actual permits being issued. And I think the permits need to be, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that they have to be issued prior to the end of the calendar year in 2026. Is that correct? Maybe that's been shifting. Maybe there have been some extensions to that timing.
So, Chair, there are some. There is a tie to the issuance of building permits. All I can say is that will be something that staff will be reporting to council on in our upcoming report.
Right. Okay. Because I'm just what I'm wondering is how with the I guess the comprehensive zoning bylaw review underway, and it's not actually scheduled to be finalized with final approval, that is, until the end of 2025. And looking at what's been reported on the agreement, it seems like there's some important pieces there will require an update to the zoning bylaw. So is the work plan anticipate fast tracking some of those things so that we can get things as a right to allow for sufficient runway to get those permits issued for various projects? I'm just trying to get an understanding of how you plan on managing that work program, I suppose.
So Chair, the additional permits we anticipate actually would not come from the zoning bylaw, because as you correctly identified of when that would be approved, the bulk of the permits would come from the other initiatives as they make their way through.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, all those clarifications. Thank you. Is there anybody else? Any other questions for in-person members?
It's a member count. Thank you for the speaker. I'm not sure it's the moment to ask, but I got a lot of message recently regarding the 4-unit. The message, I think City Ottawa is released on the social media about the maximum 4-unit in the land. So what we act on this initiative, because we just adopt 3-unit, but now we're working on talking about the 4-unit. The question I got is because it changed not dramatically, but even for me as a professional, I couldn't follow the change of the program. My concern how to make more available to the public for the change of the city planning policy, because from 3-unit to 4-unit is call of the change. Intensification about the site. Yeah, so what do we add on the 4-unit to the policy now? Are we really working on that now? Are we looking for the 2025 or 2024?
So Chair, I can take a stab at that, and then I don't want to steal too much of Carol's thunder in terms of what she might be presenting on to this committee later on. But just a reminder in terms of whether it's Bill 23 and the 3-unit permission or the 4-unit permission that CMHC has asked us to look into, it is a permission, it is not a minimum. So if a lot could physically fit those units, then that's great. We would look at provisions to try and permit those units. But if the lot is too small, or just a homeowner or landowner just doesn't want to provide that, or if a project is coming in for only 2 units, there's nothing that say that it has to be a minimum of 3 or 4 units.
Thank you. Thanks. And yeah, and I'm sure Carol Reddy will provide some more detail on measures to be taken, or the expectation around the comprehensive zoning bylaw and how that will address it. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, and I'll hand it back to staff then for the next item.
Sorry, it's Jeff.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries at all. So I think, Royce, if I may, one of the questions that is coming to me from community groups, particularly, especially in the absence of a published version of the actual agreement, and I continue to talk to the mayor about getting that agreement into the public sphere. Are we committed in our agreement for HAP funding to implement 4 units as a right within the city? Whether we are committed or not, is that something that would move forward through the comprehensive zoning bylaw review and be subject to a vote of council?
So Chair, I'm not able to answer on whether the agreement is publicly accessible. I've put that out to legal and I'm still waiting for a response, so I won't be able to answer that tonight. In terms of whether that's the 4 units is a requirement of the agreement, again, it's the same sort of response. As we put together the report to committee and council, that will be something that we'll be able to have through that report. But I think it's too early to tell right now on how the agreement focuses on the 4 units permission. And I'm sorry, I forgot. I can't remember the last part of your question.
Whether or not, if there were a commitment, or if we simply decided, if Carol decided to propose 4 units everywhere as rights as part of our OP, is that subject to a vote of council?
Yes, at the end of the day, that the zoning bylaw is up to is council's decision in terms of their votes.
Thanks, Russ.
Okay, any other questions? Wave your hands furiously if you're sitting, if you need to, and so I can see, sorry. Okay, let's move along then. I'll turn it back to staff for the next item, please.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Chair. Eric, could I have the first slide?
Yeah.
So I've been introduced a few times and mentioned that I'm Carol Ruddy, the acting program manager of the zoning unit, and it's my team that is responsible for producing a new zoning bylaw to implement the new official plan. And just a word about timing, I do wish that this meeting was occurring maybe a couple of months from now, and then I could really get into some details with you about what's in the new zoning bylaw. And I'd really love to spill the beans tonight, but I can't. I can't spill anything that's in the draft bylaw ahead of what council seeing it. But I can talk in general terms about what the zoning bylaw, or rather the new official plan, is telling us to do. We know what we have to do. It's a question of how we do it. So could I have the next slide, please? So this is a little saying that goes around and around in Ontario, that the federal government has all the money, provincial government has all the power, and the municipality has to deal with the issues. And then I would add that the official plan provides the policy framework, but it's up to the zoning bylaw to get things going, to make it actually happen. And so that's the very sort of very meaty challenge that my team has had. Many times during the public consultations for the new official plan, it was said, oh, well, you know, questions are asked, and then, oh, we'll find out about that, how that rolls out in the new zoning bylaw. So that day is coming very soon, where we will be releasing the first draft, and the first draft of the zoning map as well. Next slide, please. So during the time that the new zoning bylaw has been underway, we've really faced an accelerated rate of change in municipalities across Ontario in terms of the legislation and the provincial legislation changing, and the sort of proactive actions on the part of the federal government as well in wading into territory that's traditionally been a municipality's basket of issues to deal with. So starting in 2022, the current conservative government for our province published a document called the Housing Affordability Task Force Report, and that the recommendations in that report have been really filtering through planning discourse in Ontario and starting to be implemented in legislation as well. And so it's had a widespread sort of impact. And then we had Bill 109 later in March of 2022, and that changed many things in relation to the development approvals processes and implemented, you know, which is some of the questions that were asked of Court and Steve tonight. And the whole point of those changes really was to speed up development review processes to try and get more housing into the pipeline and ready for into the supply to address the shortage in housing that we have right now. And then later, once again, in October of 2022, Bill 23 was brought before the provincial legislature, and it made extensive changes to the Planning Act, Development Charges Act and other provincial acts that relate to planning, the planning framework in Ontario. And it was through Bill 23 that the province unilaterally passed legislation, so changes to the Planning Act, that stated that no municipal bylaw can forbid, 3 units essentially being permitted on an urban residential service piece of land. So all municipalities across Ontario, if there are municipal services, water and sewer, then, and it's a residential lot, then 3 units are permitted on it. That's really what it comes down to in a nutshell. And then there was discussion that Carolyn brought up about the 4-unit issue, which is something that was also discussed in the Housing Affordability Task Force report and has come to the forefront as a result of the Housing Accelerator Fund. So directing municipalities to, look at 4 units and funding for the Housing Accelerator Fund to be conditional on looking at permissions for 4 units in municipal bylaws. There were further changes in 2023. So there was the housing pledge that Ottawa was asked to enter into with the provincial government. So 151,000 homes in 10 years. And further changes that my team is keeping an eye on. There were proposed changes to the provincial policy statement and further sort of rumblings about changes from Minister Calandra relating to the Planning Act, and then Bill 150, which reversed the provincial modifications to our official plan. And now we have Bill 156, which has just landed yesterday or the day before, which proposes further changes that municipalities are going to have to respond to. So it's been a great time of flux in terms of the planning policy framework. And I got to say, it's been challenging to keep up with it in terms of the implications for the new zoning. Next slide, please. So tonight I'm going to talk about these key issues that we have to implement in the official plan. The first is increasing housing supply. So I think we're all aware that we have not only a climate change crisis, but we have a housing affordability crisis in Ottawa. Ottawa's very similar to other cities all across Canada and in North America in dealing with this issue. We also having a homelessness crisis and a climate change crisis. And to the extent possible that you can use land use regulations to try and address these crises, it's been the responsibility of my team to try and find concrete ways to try and mitigate some of these challenges that we're facing. We have to deal with the adequacy of municipal services and on-site stormwater management, given that the Planning Act has been revised to allow really development 11 units and more. That form of development is subject to site plan control, but 10 units and less are no longer subject to site plan control. Site plan control is the way that municipalities achieve appropriate stormwater management as development occurs. And so since that window is widened for when site plan control is not required, it's now sort of shifted that weight of responsibility for looking at stormwater management and making sure that it's addressed and we're not looking at overland flooding in neighborhoods because stormwater is not being managed. That responsibility is shifting to the zoning bylaw, so it's incumbent on my team to develop provisions to deal with that. The HAF application, the Housing Accelerator Fund application, committed the city to looking at new opportunities for development in proximity to transit. So it's been stated publicly previously that the new zoning bylaw will implement the maximum heights that are permitted in secondary plans to, sort of address that requirement or that commitment in the Housing Accelerator Fund, and quite simply also as a reasonable expectation that a zoning bylaw will implement the maximum heights that are contemplated in an official plan going forward. And that is, this is something that's, if it's contemplated in a secondary plan, then the zoning bylaw should implement it and then institute appropriate mechanisms to maintain the intent of the official plan and the secondary plan as development occurs at those maximum as of right heights. There is an urgent need to address the range of housing choices and housing needs that are faced by all residents of Ottawa. So there's a continuum housing that needs to be provided in the zoning bylaw, going from shelters for emergency housing for people who are homeless, all the way up to market housing. There are policies in section 4.2 of the official plan that direct the zoning bylaw to implement these permissions for a continuum of housing. And so the zoning bylaw will do that in its first draft. We also have to make room for trees and support the urban forest trees canopy. There are many reasons for this, related to mitigating climate change, addressing heat island effect in urban areas of the city. It's also an equity issue because there are some parts of the city that have been redeveloped or developed from the beginning without adequate room for trees. And so we need zoning provisions to address this issue and to even out any inequities in the city that there are with regard to where we have adequate room for trees as development occurs. Another key direction in the official plan is to support the development of 15-minute neighborhoods. And 15-minute neighborhoods are neighborhoods where the day-to-day needs of residents are available within a 15-minute walk or bicycle ride. And it's really trying to make neighborhoods nicer places to live, really, and make it easier for people to get their day-to-day needs without the need for a car if they choose to do so. I've mentioned climate change mitigation, adaptation, and public health related issues. Those come up in relation to equity and housing affordability and making room for trees. All of these things start to come together in terms of having shared priorities and shared mechanisms to achieve each of these items with a check mark. And equity and zoning, we have to make sure that the unrecognized, aspects of zoning that can impact equity are sort of uncovered and brought to light, and that we address those unrecognized impacts on that zoning can have on equitable access to economic opportunities, to nice places to go and sit in a park, and good environments as development occurs in neighborhoods. So that's an overview. I've got a series of slides for each of these points, and I'll try not to take too long because there's a lot to say and the night will get too long. So next slide, please. The next few slides deal with the housing affordability crisis that we have and housing supply. So the push for more housing, there are things that the city can do in the zoning bylaw to the extent that it will address the potential for allowing for more housing to be built. But there are also housing market factors that are not in the control of the zoning bylaw or even of the official plan. And these have to do with things like interest rates, the ability of developers to get financing from financial institutions, the availability of skilled labor, the availability of materials and the prices of materials. All of these things can impact when and where housing can be built. But to the extent possible that the city can impact supply of housing, in particular with regard to zoning, we are taking that on and doing the job that we've been charged to do through the official plan. Next slide, please. So that job is, in terms of our growth management strategy, to create the potential in zoning to build 92,000 new units in existing urban areas of the city. And this is a target in the official plan. We're trying to achieve by 2046 a slim majority of redevelopment of new dwelling units to be within the existing areas of the city through intensification. And 49,000 of those units should be large household units that are suitable for families or larger households. And next slide, please. So how are we going to do that? The official plan establishes a framework of hubs, corridors, and neighborhood designations, and something called an evolving overlay, which if you're involved in planning for the last couple of years, you've probably heard about as part of the consultations on the official plan. You'll see in this image along the bottom left, that's a Main Street corridor. And so you see the higher buildings there. And then you'll see purple buildings, and that's the evolving overlay. That's the area where we're expecting to see a little bit more uplift in zoning. The official plan policies for the evolving overlay, or for them to, the overlay to act as that transition between, the more denser forms of development in the hub designation, and in this case, in this slide, along the Main Street corridor. So the evolving overlay is that intervening area between the higher density area and the interior of the neighborhood. So the interior of the neighborhood here shows buildings in orange and yellow. And those buildings are meant to represent the type of redevelopment that we expect to see in neighborhoods by 2046. Next slide, please. Another key direction in the official plan, or a key sort of guiding principle of the new zoning bylaw, is that we have to provide the quantity of new dwellings projected that are needed in our growth management strategy. So that's by intensification, it's 92,000 or so, and overall by 2046, a total of about 191,000 new dwelling units. We have to ensure through our zoning provisions that we are achieving the quality of development that we want to see. So we have to look after the functional aspects of development as it occurs on lots. And then we are looking at supporting development as it goes. So I think of that as in terms of the support that's provided by master plans like the green space master plan, and the infrastructure master plan, and the transportation master plan. They integrate the transportation policies and the infrastructure policy support that's needed to achieve a really great, the most livable mid-sized city in North America. We need all of those supports, and we need all of those things working together in parallel to achieve that, to achieve growth that is balanced and that provides good quality neighborhoods. Next slide, please. So I've finished talking about housing supply, and we're moving on to adequate services and on-site stormwater management. Now that development that is 10 units and less on a lot is no longer subject to site plan control, as I mentioned, we need to have zoning provisions that will fill that infrastructure, that gap in terms of how we manage stormwater in the city. And so you will see provisions in the draft zoning bylaw that address for the first time on-site stormwater management, as well as the adequacy of service, water and sewer services. We already have provisions in the zoning bylaw that will say that development can't occur unless you have adequate water and sewer service, but those provisions will be strengthened and made more specific so that they are so that it is clearer in terms of what the tests are. Next slide, please. More housing near transit. So we do need the chief sort of direction with this is implementing those maximum heights and secondary plans around hubs and around transit stations that are not already implemented in the zoning bylaw. That's a key sort of deliverable for the new zoning bylaw, and it's been a long time coming. Next slide, please. In terms of housing needs, you may be familiar with the policies in the official plan in section 4.2. I spoke to that continuum of housing that needs to be provided, starting with shelter housing, and then shared accommodations in forms of housing such as residential care facilities and group homes, all the way up into market housing. And this new zoning bylaw has to provide, we will be providing broader permissions for supportive housing and emergency housing in accordance with those policy directions, very strong ones in section 4.2 of the official plan. Next slide, please. In terms of making room for trees, the team has been looking carefully at recent development applications and listening to discussions at Planning and Housing Committee to identify issues relating to the challenges that we are facing in terms of tree retention and support and tree planting, ensuring that as development or redevelopment occurs and trees are lost, that we are making at the same time space for trees. As part of the Bill 23 amendments that we did last year, we implemented a new requirement for minimum landscaping in the rear yard. It's a very modest step forward, and it was clearly signaled in that report that was approved by Planning, Housing and Council that the new zoning bylaw would take further steps to strengthen standards for making room for trees as redevelopment occurs. And so that is something that will be delivered through a variety of mechanisms, and I'll be really excited to talk to you about them at a future meeting if I'm invited. But the means by which we are going to be trying to support the urban forestry canopy will be clearly articulated in the staff report, and the provisions will be explained in our strategy for going forward with trying to keep trees in the city as we intensify. Next slide, please. No worries. Thank you. 15-minute neighborhoods. There are many policies in the official plan that concerning 15-minute neighborhoods, and many initiatives in them and directions for the new zoning bylaw. Once again, I wish I could give you a preview about how we want to be doing this, but I think you're probably, if you've read the official plan or you're familiar with it, you know I can mention the minor corridor designation, which is a new designation that was implemented in the official plan. And it goes through neighborhoods and will provide permissions for non-residential uses to support 15, those day-to-day needs. And that is one of the obvious ways that we'll be able to, implement those directions in the official plan to try and make more complete communities that are easier for people to get to their day-to-day needs and give them more choices about how to fulfill those needs. Next slide, please. Climate change and public health. There are a variety of ways that zoning can support policy relating to climate change mitigation, adaptation, and how the built form affects the health of the residents of the city. There is a discussion paper that details potential zoning strategies for addressing through land use regulations, support for public health, and climate mitigation and adaptation. Some of the issues that were dealt with in that discussion paper were density near transit stations, because ideally, in theory, people will have to travel less if they're close or they can use sustainable forms of transit if there is greater density near to transit stations and corridors that have transit. So putting density there makes a lot of sense. On-site stormwater management is something as well to address public health, because flooding can really impact people's lives, and that's definitely a public health issue in terms of its impact. Multi-unit housing forms, broader permissions for multi-unit housing forms will help to reduce the GHG emissions associated with heating and cooling dwellings. So as we, modify the zoning bylaw to increase the number of locations in the city where multi-unit dwellings are permitted, hopefully that will facilitate the construction of more multi-unit dwellings and help to reduce our GHG emissions associated with heating and cooling. Supporting the shift to electric vehicles. In zoning, we can make requirements relating to the provision of EV-ready parking spaces. And that was something that was signaled in the climate change discussion paper for the new zoning bylaw. I've already talked about trees and the urban heat island effect, and there's both urban forestry canopies implications, as well as equity implications and public health implications, because our public health staff tell us that neighborhoods with trees really do help people to be happier, because they're nice environments to be in. And I think these are the soft sort of things that we tend to not pay enough attention to because they're not quantifiable, but they're super important. So I'm going just to put that out there right now. I've already spoken about that continuum of housing that is needed in Ottawa, and we need broader permissions for things like residential care facilities, shelters, and group homes. The official plan policies in section 4.2 do state that there are to no longer be restrictions and separation distances and caps on these forms of housing. And so it is incumbent on the zoning bylaw to remove any such separation distances or caps that are currently in the zoning bylaw unless there is an official plan policy directing us to do otherwise. And the final point is really an obvious one in terms of climate change and public health, but continuing to prohibit development in hazardous locations is something that the zoning bylaw already does and will continue to do in terms of prohibiting development in the floodplain and directing development away from hazardous locations such as steep slopes. And so next slide, please. Now, equity and zoning. There are equity implications embedded or unrecognized in zoning regulations, and one of them is something you may have heard of, is exclusionary zoning. So zoning that permits only one form or very limited forms of development. And that really does reduce the number of choices that people have in terms of the locations where they can choose to live or find housing that suits them. And so we will be looking at broader permissions for all sorts of housing across the city, not just in certain neighborhoods. And as I mentioned, land use regulations really do impact whether there is access to services, stores, and economic opportunities. And so the 15-minute neighborhood policies are a really good start in addressing that. And finally, an equitable zoning bylaw ensures the intent of the OP is implemented equally and consistently across the city, and that certain neighborhoods are not treated differently or affected disproportionately than other neighborhoods. So we do have to look at this in terms of where higher density development is permitted, and higher density development should really be permitted in really nice parts of the city as well, not just along busy corridors, for example. So that is something else that the zoning team is looking at. Next slide, please. So these are the timelines for the new zoning bylaw project. It's an iterative process, and given its complexity and that it impacts every property in the city, it really is necessary to go back to council a few times and give, with the release of 2 drafts and then a final draft, which would be the one that we would bring for approval. And in between the release of those drafts, there would be roughly a year to 9 months of public consultations. So you'll see in the yellow, we're just about to begin phase 4, which is release of the first draft of the new zoning bylaw. It will be out for public consultations until March of 2025, when we'll release the second draft of the new zoning bylaw. Well, that version of the zoning bylaw will be more detailed and it will be more resolved because we will be receiving comments from the public, and that there will be certain issues that aren't able to deal with now because of the framework of the bylaw. But once we get comments and feedback from councillors and the public, we will be able to get to those further levels of refinement in zoning provisions that we need to get to. That will be in phase with the release of the second draft of March 2025. The final draft is December of 2025. And then after that, we will inevitably go into appeals, because unlike the new official plan, the new zoning, which was not appealable, the new zoning bylaw will be appealable to anyone who's made a public delegation or provided comments on the bylaw. So final slide, please. That does conclude my presentation. You can actually just go back to the last slide. These are hidden slides that were not supposed to be included in the presentation. So we'll leave it there with the timeline, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have in relation to the project.
Are there any questions from the, do I see any hands up? Oh, Member Lang, why don't you go ahead?
And Carolyn, there's also one in the room.
Okay, thank you very much, Carol. And thank you for the presentation, Carol.
So this is a complicated question, so you probably can't give a clear one sentence answer, but with the new zoning bylaw addressing elements that haven't generally been addressed through the zoning bylaw, is that not going to make approvals much slower to get through that whole process?
No, I would say not, actually, because the zoning bylaw provides regulation for as of right development. And so if you meet the regulation, and if the regulation is written properly and it is clear what the standards are, which is what good zoning does, then it should be quite simply the same as the current framework we have of provisions in the current zoning bylaw. So I think there's maybe a nuance to your question if we are attempting to do new things that have not been done before with zoning, such as requiring, say, for instance, EV-ready parking spaces. There are questions of jurisdiction under the Planning Act, under Section 34, which is what enables municipalities to pass zoning bylaws. But we will be following in the footsteps of other municipalities that have already done that in the case of EV-ready parking spaces. So I would say certainly the intent is not to make things slower. It's to increase transparency and to establish clear rules that are can be easily interpreted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member White?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Carol, thanks very much for your presentation. I think I've heard versions of it a couple of times over the past couple of years. I just have and it's a hobby horse I've been riding for a little bit. I have a concern about the integral relationship between the infrastructure issues and the intensification issues intensification initiatives have been identified by the province, and of course, in there have to be reflected in our new zoning bylaw. Am I correct in assuming that, and there are some neighborhoods within the urban area, inside the urban area, inside the greenbelt, that have been characterized by very significant stormwater management problems in terms of they're being served by stormwater by ditches. The city's done, and then one community in particular I'm familiar with is the City View community. The city's done a study that identifies major problems with the ditching systems in these communities, such that the intensification that has actually been going on now for 8 or 10 years has been contributing to problems with these ditches. And in the City View case, a study in 22, I think, identified that there was a $800 million a year problem that needs to be solved in order to solve the drainage problems in the neighborhood, and $800 million over a 9-year period, I think it was. And in that study, staff at the city identified the intensification that's going on there, and it's essentially doubling the density within the neighborhoods. That new houses are exacerbating the existing situation due to the lack of an adequate drainage system. Is it fair to say that in a situation like that, that the new zoning bylaw will establish some sort of a moratorium on intensification until such time as the city deals with that drainage ditch deficiency problem in a community like that? And I think they mentioned also there's another community called Lakeview, I think it is, and then it also cited problems that Westboro has experienced over the years with this kind of issue. Is it fair to say that the new zoning bylaw will be looking specifically at those problems and essentially putting some sort of a moratorium on intensification until such time as those issues are addressed?
Through the chair, Colin, the answer to your question is no. The new zoning bylaw, as I said, will implement requirements for on-site stormwater management in any situation where there is a difference between pre and post runoff. So if there's basically an increase in impermeable surfaces, there will be, that will be a trigger for a requirement for on-site stormwater management. And so that is the direction that we will be going in the new zoning bylaw, supported by the infrastructure master plan. The scale of these problems for the city to try and address them through infrastructure works, as you said, is unsustainable in terms of the numbers of hundreds of millions of dollars across the city. It's probably in the billions. And really, the most direct and practical approach is to deal with on-site stormwater management on a per lot basis so that the situation does not worsen. And that, in fact, the flows can be attenuated on the lot during rain events. So that's the direction that the infrastructure master plan is going to be directing. And it's the challenge of the new zoning bylaw to implement that. So I would say the issue that you've described is a very serious issue that the new zoning bylaw is taking head on in terms of establishing new requirements to address redevelopment and intensification as it occurs in neighborhoods, to allow it to go ahead, but to require any impacts relating to stormwater management to be addressed on that site as redevelopment occurs. And there is a potential through these new provisions to actually mitigate the overall stormwater problem in a neighborhood. Because as these new stormwater on-site, measures are taken on a site-by-site basis, this can impact the total pre and post flows at a storm after a storm, at a storm event.
Thank you, Carol. Member White, did you have a follow-up there?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you, Carol. My concern is in the neighborhood that I cited is that we're dealing with infill that is essentially, well, at the present time, is single detached residential. It's doubling the number of units on the originally developed lots. And I mean, I'm wondering how, I know you're not an engineer, and I'm wondering how you deal with stormwater management on single detached residential properties in a way that's economical, and then that also solves the problem that this community has experienced over the years. The intensification that's been going on is obviously, I guess, not been subject to any of this stormwater management approaches, and the city identified the fact that has resulted in a problem of increasing the seriousness of the problem. So I'm just wondering how this is dealt with on how stormwater management is dealt with on single detached residential developments in an economical way.
I guess we're entering into a new phase of development in the city, where these issues just have to be looked after, because we need to redevelop, we need to intensify, and we need to make sure that we look after the problems on the lot. So this is just the new reality for development in Ottawa. It is a necessary functional standard that needs to be addressed. And if you're following the infrastructure master plan, there's quite a bit of detail in that process that's informing, like my team, actually me personally, working with the team that is leading the infrastructure master plan and their consultants in developing these zoning provisions.
So individual properties will be subject to stormwater management controls.
That is what is proposed in the IMP.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. If I may, I'm just going to, I see the committee clerk, Eric, your hand has been raised there, so I'll just quickly go to you first, and then before I'll call on others.
Chair, thank you. The member Nuruddin, as well as member Berggraf, had their hands raised in the room.
Okay, that's terrific. I was hoping, Jason, that you might be able to weigh in with an opinion, hoping that you might do that. Go ahead.
I wasn't the first, actually. I defer to my colleague.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you so much for the good work your team is doing. The new zoning law is a good one, but I want to speak on 15 minutes neighborhood. A lot of community members don't have where to meet for public consultation. And a lot of apartments don't have, maybe party rooms or conference rooms. And I did not see it here. Maybe it's gonna appear somewhere. But then also I wanted to speak more on public consultations in regards to what the youth, the women want to see when we talk about 15 minutes neighborhood. Yeah. Like when is the deadline? How can the youth
Well, there's 2
prepare
years.
themselves, to
There's 2 years, so the deadline is far away, and we'll be receiving comments right up until the day it goes to council for approval in December. So we have lots of time. The public engagement strategy will be released as part of our report that's going to planning and joint committee pretty soon. And so there's going to be a lengthy document that outlines what the public engagement strategy is for the new zoning bylaw. But I can tell you that the new zone, the draft zoning bylaw is going to be released in a form that will allow people to insert comments directly into it. So that's going to try and make it, if you're looking at it and you say, oh, that doesn't make sense to me, or I don't like that, you can insert a comment right on that page of the draft zoning bylaw to try and make it easier. And there will be, virtual meetings and public open houses and lots of material available on our Engage Ottawa page. We have, if you search Engage Ottawa new zoning bylaw, you'll see a lot of material already up there. And that's going to be the access point for the new zoning bylaw. So we're sort of following the footsteps of the engagement strategy for the official plan. And that was Charmaine and Steve's team that did that. And they really did manage to reach a lot of people that we typically don't reach just by using different engagement strategies. A lot of virtual meetings and things like that for people who can't show up because they're putting their kids to bed or something, or because they're working. So we'll be following in those footsteps and trying to make a lot of opportunities for providing comments.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Member Burgroff, did you?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks. Through you, Chair. Maybe just to wrap up the site water, stormwater management conversation a little, or at least to address maybe what Member White asked. So the home builders have been working with infrastructure staff on actual models and solutions for those single family, small development lots. So they actually have, it's pretty far down the road. It is paused for a little bit as the infrastructure master plan has gotten a bit delayed along with the DC bylaw, but that's a separate thing. So they are working on, the actual solutions for those really small infill lots there. Hopefully to a point where it's as effective and as cost effective as humanly possible. But that work is going with home builders. So I think Member White can rest assured more or less on that front. Two more things. Carol, you kind of referenced it very, very briefly or touched on it with 15-minute neighborhoods and related to car-free living. But the other, I think, big thing, and it's been in the media the past few days, is parking.
Oh, yes.
And it wasn't kind of in the slides, but I'm assuming, and I'm giving a leading question, but that the new zoning bylaw will look at how parking is handled in the city as well.
For sure, we sure have to. There are specific policies in the OP that direct that, either the elimination or reduction of parking minimums. So it's on, and given all the priorities that we have, really housing is our top priority, and probably trees after that, and then making sure the lot functions properly, the stormwater management, and then parking's kind of somewhere down lower. So, if that's, you can read between the lines there in terms of directions that the new zoning bylaw vehicles.
As thank you for your question. Some people around the table have brought parking to public discussion lately.
I've been making assumptions and I'm glad to get the answers.
The other part is is there a role for this body related to the zoning bylaw other than sort of just the public? Like, obviously anyone can participate in the public consultation, but is there something you conceive of looking for from this body in particular about its development, about the bylaws development?
Well, I think that the chair or Eric can clarify about the role of the committee, but I don't think we can accept directions, but we can certainly bring things to you. Eric, can you clarify?
Chair, the mandate of the Planning Advisory Committee is fairly limited in that it would deal with mainly with the departmental work plan. Nonetheless, staff may seek to consult the Planning Advisory Committee on select issues if that would be warranted in the circumstances.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. Thank you. Much appreciated.
Yeah, no, thank you for the clarification. Would it also be possible, I believe this committee has the ability to bring forward a motion to planning committee, and would it be possible within that context, if there was something that we thought this committee could usefully engage in, to bring forward a motion to planning committee to ask planning committee to direct staff to the extent that's even needed? Maybe that's more than is needed, but is that also a possibility?
Chair, this is Caitlin Salter McDonald. I rejoined the table from where I was charging my laptop in the back. So a couple of things to note. This committee could certainly request within its mandate that, as Carolyn mentioned, there's several phases of this project. So could request that staff come back at the future stages as well as this project evolves. And as part of those discussions, the committee can make recommendations. So could pass motions to formally comment on the draft, for example, at those future stages, and that would be passed on to the committee for consideration to Planning and Housing Committee and Council. So there's a couple of different ways to go about it, but if I'm not putting words in their mouth, I think staff would be certainly willing to come back at future stages to this committee.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any other questions? Anyone in the room who has a question?
Chair.
Yes.
I do have a question. Again, I'm really hesitant to ask because on one hand, my client want really want more unit from the site. So I'm just wondering for the new zoning bylaw, probably it's incredible, but can we have the maximum intensified rate? What's really happened here is I remember the one member mentioned is double the density, but what's really happened on my driving board is I have a site and was the single house, but I can intensify 12 times, still in compliance with the zoning bylaw. 12 times, we're looking at 12 times. So, at one hand, on my behalf of my client, I want to help him to achieve the goal. But on another hand, I don't see the way in the one neighborhood. So one single house, you have the 4 bedroom, but 12 will be 48 bedroom, and still in comply with the updated zoning bylaw. So that's the really happening in the city now. And I have a lot of clients come to me asking, can we do this? Can we do that? So it's dilemma, I know a dilemma, but what we can do for the new zoning bylaw.
Okay, so you're saying that is currently permitted now?
Yes, so
Yes.
every if the proposal is in comply with the new zoning bylaw now. Yeah, so
And so I'm just trying to understand what your question is. What's your dilemma?
You know, but can we have, I know that we have housing crisis now, so PBS and OP talking about the housing identification and diversity. But somehow, can we have the maximum rate for the identification, like 4 times? I know it's impractical, but it's happening at this trust day, it's happening now. See,
Okay, so you're asking me, can we further increase the density permitted?
no, can we have the cap?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take it away. I can't answer. But, you know, the official plan provides targets and they're minimums. There are no maximums. And so the zoning bylaw, you know, we have to operate within that framework that's in the official plan, but there are built-in sort of limits on how much you can fit when you also apply the yard setbacks, the, you know, the front, side and rear setbacks and all the requirements that we're going to be having for, you know, making adequate room for trees and, you know, access to the rear for waste management and so on, because those types of units would be required to have, you know, enhanced access for waste management and so on. So all of those things start to limit the number of units that you can actually fit on a lot in compliance with the bylaw and still meet the building code. So there's, in a sense, there's a self-limiting thing there in terms of the size of the lot and the maximum building height. And, you know, like you're talking about a scenario where someone's going to be maxing out the number of bedrooms in every unit. And I mean, there are certain range of scenarios that, you know, that property owners can decide, you know, is that the type of unit that I want to build? Will it sell quickly enough? Is this the market that I'm looking at? You know, is this, am I going to be able to unload these fast enough so that I'm not hit with a lot of carrying costs and so on? So there are many things at play in terms of in any particular development scenario that's going to result.
You know, I keep watching the COA application, zoning commitment application. So I always see we can find the policy either in OP or PBS. As you mentioned about like 40% low income and student housing. So in policy always have some certain strategy or the direction to support it. Obviously that minor violence or even some like amendment of application. So what's the benchmark? What's the as an architect, I don't want to see the city. You know, it's no end, just big world.
Well, maximum building heights are one of the big deals. Like, you know, low-rise, gentle intensification, you know, I think it's culturally almost, we need to develop new sorts of tolerances for multi-unit dwellings. And change is hard. So people, you know, it's hard for people to accept change in neighborhoods. But there are many things, many headwinds pushing us in that direction. There's great need for housing. This is affecting the entire generation of Canadians not able to afford a house, or let alone rent, or if we walk. We have to do something.
Okay, thank you. Jeff, sorry, yeah. Member Lever, go ahead.
So I just wanted to be really clear in terms of process that this advisory committee can debate and pass its own motions with respect to positions that it wants to take on what the city is doing within its mandate. But there's no mechanism whereby you can put something in front of Planning and Housing Committee or Council on which they have to vote. So I don't know exactly what the mechanism is to get your recommendations in front of us and liaison and work with Caitlin to get things on the agenda. But I just want to be really clear, there's no way to put a motion from this advisory committee on the table of a planning committee meeting and for planning and housing to vote on that. So we'll be very interested in hearing what this advisory committee thinks about the work that is being done. If this advisory committee has strong opinions on the work that is being proposed, I do hope that we'll be back here 3 months from now, 4 months from now, to talk about the draft of the official of the comprehensive zoning bylaw. But you know, the motions that the planning and housing committee will deal with will be either coming from staff or from elected officials.
Yeah, thank you for that. Are there any other further clarifications required along those lines from any of the members, or is that fairly clear at this point? Okay, any other questions? No, okay. I had just one, I think just one last quick question. And again, we're talking about the 4 units related to the Housing Accelerator Fund. I'm assuming that staff have an expectation that permission for 4 units will be subject to some zoning limitations, whether it's setbacks, parking height, what have you, that there will be, and that will be part of the comprehensive zoning bylaw review.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions? Okay, if not, I'd like to thank staff for that presentation and for the discussion. I'm supposed to ask, I think, is the presentation and the update on the new zoning bylaw received by this committee? Seeing no dissents, we'll say that has been received. Thank you very much for that. The next item is notice of motions for consideration at subsequent meetings. Are there any notices for consideration at our next meeting? Seeing none, I will move on to the next item, which is inquiries. Are there any formal written inquiries to be submitted through this committee to staff?
Chair, are
Okay.
you looking for like a heads, sorry, Chair, are you looking for a heads up that someone might submit something?
I think I'm looking to see, this is obviously our first meeting, so people are just perhaps becoming aware that we have an ability to do this. So I think the question is, does anyone now have any formal written inquiries to submit at this juncture to staff? And then with the idea that they could come back to us. Caitlin, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
So Chair, thanks for the opportunity. So yes, an inquiry can be submitted formally at a meeting. Given your meetings are fairly well spaced apart, in between meetings, we'd be happy to pass questions on to staff from Planning Advisory Committee members, which could become a formal inquiry. So you don't have to wait till the end of the next meeting if you have a question and want some assistance formulating it or just getting it answered offline. And we'd also be happy to share any information provided by staff with the other members as well as part of that process.
Terrific, thank you. Jason, did that answer?
Yes, yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's good.
Okay, terrific. Okay, moving right along, other business. Is there any other business that members would like to raise, or anyone else around the table? Nope, seeing none. I think we are adjourned.
Wait, Chair, Member White put up his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Please go ahead, Member White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At some point, I'd like to get into some discussion of the city's success or lack thereof, or approaches, etc., related to enforcement of zoning bylaw provisions and conditions that have been imposed by the city on development, where the conditions have failed to have been met, And I'm thinking of some urban design issues in particular that are posed by some committee of adjustment, in my experience, and other through site plan approval, etc., where it's obvious that developments have not respected and implemented the conditions of approval, and there are properties out there that are urban design disasters because of the lack of compliance with these conditions. I don't know. I think our committee has some ability to consider something like that, and I'd like to have a discussion if we could.
Okay, Caitlin, can you just weigh in on that?
I'll weigh in a general sense, which is where there are matters where members are not quite sure if that's going to fit within the albeit very limited mandate of this committee. We would suggest member reach out in writing and we can review that. Again, the answer can range between it's really not within the committee's mandate. Some aspect may be as it may be something that's already on staff's work plan that they will be bringing to you, or might touch on another issue that staff is bringing to this committee. So long and short of it, I don't think it is directly within your mandate, but we're happy to review those individual cases and see if and when it might fit.
Okay, and should members connect directly with you? Should that go through the chair and then I can work with you or the clerk or whomever? What would you recommend is most?
Madam Chair, appreciating members can always go to the committee coordinator directly with questions at any time. I would say working through you or with you, Chair, would be the most appropriate course of action for these types of requests.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else, and then it's just about 8 o'clock, I think we're adjourned. The next meeting date is not actually set, but members will be advised when that information is available from the clerk, I believe. And just a reminder that if you drove to the meeting today, please provide your parking ticket to Eric for validation. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to staff for your presentations this evening. And for joining and supporting this first meeting of the PAC for this term. Appreciate it very much, and look forward to further good discussions amongst this committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.